Well, how's it going, everyone? And welcome to another Neurodivergent chat. Now, one of the previous episodes that we did a piece on lovable weirdos. Is there a place for them in movies and video games, entertainment, and all that sort of thing? And if you did watch that, and I highly recommend watching it because it's one of mine. One of the things I mentioned was the fact that I wanted to see less shows and games where the neurodivergent person played a side character, and more where they played a bit of a main role, almost like a sort of a hero role, making this sort of entrance, this main scene, all that sort of jazz. Well, today, guys, we have a treat because we are going to do a review of one particular show that does exactly that. A show that really actually challenged people's ideas because this wasn't just this is a hero. It was a very real neurodivergent drama series. The piece I'm going to be talking about with you is The Good Doctor. Now, the first thing to mention is this is technically a revamp, a spin-off, this particular Good Doctor, because the original Good Doctor is not an American drama series. It's actually Korean. It's actually a Korean series that the person who directed the House and produced the House TV series that some people do love, saw this and thought people need to see it. Now, we're going to base this off the American one because that's the one I have watched. And a lot of the stuff we're going to be basing off is based off the episodes of season 1 because that was all I could afford. Thank you, capitalism. I'm joking. Thank you, my broke life. To really give you guys a real setting the scene, a real taste of The Good Doctor. Now, some of you guys might have actually seen reviews of The Good Doctor by Dr. Mike, the YouTuber who is also a family physician, where he addresses and scrutinizes and analyzes the medical parts of The Good Doctor. And as someone who has way less experience than him in the medical field, I'm not going to challenge Dr. Mike's opinions on the medical science. However, I'm probably more neurodivergent than Dr. Mike is, so I'm going to use my experience of being neurodivergent to address more the neurodivergent aspects of this piece. Now, what we're going to be doing is the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the characters in The Good Doctor so that you guys can get a real good understanding of what is going on. So we're going to start off with Dr. Sean Murphy, the main character in this series. Now, if you recognise his face, there's probably a good reason for that. This is Freddie Highmore. Freddie Highmore, who was also, I believe, Charlie from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Now, Dr. Sean Murphy, played by Freddie Highmore, is autistic. He also has something called savant syndrome, which allows him to basically visualize things beneath the surface. He can almost read a textbook, medical textbook, and apply it to the human body, measure it down, even in terms of, analyzing adult bone structure and things like that, and being able to translate it to a child's skeletal structure, all that sort of thing. We'll touch a little bit on the savant syndrome a little bit later as well, because that's actually one of the cool, unique selling points of this series. But he is autistic, and he has elements of his life and his work that are very real and very difficult for him to handle. It's not all about hero stories here. There are things that he struggles on a social aspect, very much like any autistic individual. Then we come on to a character who people get to see pretty well, which is Aaron Glassman. Now, Aaron Glassman is in this series a close friend, a very, very close friend of Sean, the main character. You see, he, as well as being a someone who looks after the hospital, has had a very close bond with Sean Murphy because Sean's parents weren't the most connected. And so Aaron Glassman, he looks after Sean as a child from when he was 14. And so has a very sort of advisory role in the first few episodes to Sean to try and help him with aspects of his life. But he's also a prominent member of this hospital. The very person that tried to get Sean into this hospital in the first place fought very many battles to do so as well. Then we come to two characters which you can't really separate. These two. Now, these characters are, bear with me a second, Jared on the left and Claire on the right. Hold on, yeah. So Jared Kalu and Claire Brown. Now, the first time we see them, they have a bit of fun, for want of a better word. And so they have a bit of a personal and emotional relationship together. But they very much seem to be opposites. Jared seems a very shut-off person until a very sensitive subject of race comes up in one of the episodes in which the emotions do spill over, understandably so. But Claire ends up being a friend of Sean. She's on a similar sort of level to Sean. They're both surgical residents. They are both working together, and she ends up having this sort of, emotional is the wrong word, empathetic attitude towards Sean, and they build this bond together where she helps him, he helps her, very much in between them. Then we come on to, some people would say the antagonist, but I sort of push against that a little bit. Neil Melendez. Neil is the sort of the head of the surgical group that Sean's part of, the sort of like the captain, would you say, of the team, right? And he puts Sean through his paces. Some would say unkindly so. In fact, even Neil said in one of the episodes that he's pushed Sean further than Sean even deserved, the pressure, and sees that, sometimes from himself. Now, Sean labels him as arrogant, and he sort of is. In fact, that is actually a funny moment when Sean refers to Neil Melendez on the right as arrogant. I watch it and I go, Sean, stop being so honest with him. It's not going to help your situation. But Neil is the type of guy that struggles to start off with. Almost a sense of like worry, a fatherly worrying, let's say. But as the episodes move on in this first season, he ends up very trusting of Sean. In fact, again, we're going to touch on Neil a little bit in one of the next slides as to just how much. Then we come on to Neil's boss, basically. That is Dr. Marcus Andrews. Now, he is one of the heads of the hospital, and he initially pushes back against the idea of hiring Sean Murphy. Now, I'm not going to say that he's the bad guy. In fact, very much the opposite. In fact, I sort of understand his position. Think about it from Marcus's perspective. This isn't just, let's see what happens when you take on this potential hotshot employee, right? This isn't like sports where you play a certain player thinking that they might make a difference, and if they don't, it sort of embarrasses you and embarrasses them. No, this is a hospital. People's lives are at stake. To do something different, to hire on someone with a different thought process, it's a risky move. People's lives are at stake. So I understand his hesitancy in hiring Sean to a certain extent. And like Neil, he also works along with Sean and helps Sean. In fact, there's a really touching moment in the last episode where he's protecting Sean even though Sean doesn't want to be protected, and you see that sort of dynamic between them. So a very, very special thing that Marcus does. Really much shows a lot of people in the world, actually, and actually credit to them for that. Then we have two characters where not much is really mentioned about them really in the first season. So we start off with, I believe this is Dr. Morgan Resnick. Now, Morgan's dynamic with Sean, not that strong, but she does have a sort of relationship with Claire. They're rivals, basically. Whereas Claire is very empathetic, very caring, Morgan is very combative, very competitive. There's a fight between them, basically, and not many people enjoy that sort of relationship between them, but that's the sort of thing that happens not just in hospitals, but in businesses as well. And then lastly, in the main hospital group, we have Audrey Lim. Now, Audrey is one of the heads of the surgical residency and has this sort of advisory, overseeing, almost motherly role over the department. A very cool little role over the department as well. Really, really special group and a dynamic that works. There are people that are almost considered antagonists, but they're fighting against the grain. People that are this distant but caring. People that are there close and caring, and a little bit of combativeness in the meantime. It works out really well as a medical drama. Now, I mentioned the thing about savant syndrome, and this is for me, one of the key selling points of this series. Why I enjoyed it so much. Now, on the top left, for those of you that haven't watched it, is Sherlock, with Benedict Cumberbatch as Sherlock Holmes. And one of the cool things that was about Sherlock with Benedict Cumberbatch was how they would sort of show his thinking to the audience. This sort of, right, how am I going to narrow down the targets? How am I going to narrow down the suspects? Right, little thinkings, little thoughts and processes and everything like that. You see Sherlock's thinking. Well, in The Good Doctor, you see exactly that with Sean's thinking. In fact, the very first episode, you get this wonderful thing where you get to see how he's seeing the body, textbooks. Honestly, the pieces when you see the graphics, there's so much detail, it's almost worth pausing to see what's being read out and what's actually working in Sean's brain. This is savant syndrome in action. Savant syndrome is basically, yes, this photographic memory, but showing it to a really extreme extent that this is more than just remembering stuff. He's processing stuff all at the same time. And, that when he is given his space, when he's given his time, Sean processes a huge amount of information, even though none is there, and uses that to help cure the patient. Sometimes to the point where the patient or the patient's family is annoyed with him, but it saves a life. Absolutely saves a life. It's a great, absolutely fantastic way to show it, because you're not just mind-boggled and puzzled. You are actually with Sean, you're seeing his thinking. It's a really special way of doing it. And it's a real unique selling point, because this means it's more than just a, this is the autistic doctor or anything like that. It shows it in the Sherlock style that people enjoy, that you are with Sean, you are in the same, looking at it from the same aspect as Sean. Absolutely brilliant way in which they do it. Now, I also wanted to touch on one particular episode in this series. I think it's called 22 Steps. It's a very unemotional one as well. You see, this is where it takes a really unique turn, because Sean Murphy, an autistic doctor, basically comes across, and it is by chance because he just so happens to see it, an autistic patient. Now, there is a really special thing here, because there ends up being a connection between him and the patient that saves the patient's life. You see, Sean notices that he is being misdiagnosed by some of the hospital staff. This patient is being manhandled by staff because they see him as psychotic because of the way he's reacting to physical contact. And it's Sean that says very firmly, and actually quite impressively for Sean, because he's normally quite meek, that he goes, he's not psychotic, he's autistic. He doesn't like touch. Let him go, right? This sort of real aspect of letting him go and allows Sean to treat him as such. Sean also has another aspect to where it impacts on this autistic patient's life, because this autistic patient really struggles to keep still, stims a lot, right? And because of that, there ends up being this real difficulty in getting an MRI done because of the patient stimming. For those of you that don't know, for an MRI to work, the patient has to sit still. If they're stimming, they're not sitting still. So Sean has this brilliant way of communicating with the patient to keep them as still as possible, talking between them in a way that no one else understands apart from those two, but those two are the only ones that matter, the doctor and the patient. Really, really cool way to see how two neurodivergent people just click and just work alongside. Now, the other thing to mention about this is the fact that the autistic patient is actually played by an autistic actor as well, which is brilliant. We actually have someone neurodivergent being played by someone who's neurodivergent. So what a great way to have a direct impact on how people are communicating. I know how this autistic patient's going to communicate because I'm also autistic and I'm playing that patient, and this is how I would be communicated to. There's also really another cool point that this episode really brings over, and it's, in effect, the autistic patient's parents. You see, the parents really start to show the reality of how being an autistic parent sometimes comes with a very unique challenge when it comes to perceiving other autistic individuals. You've all heard the phrase, potentially, that you can't see the wood from the trees. This aspect that you are so close to the action that sometimes you fail to see the bigger picture. Well, the parents have this same difficulty, because when it comes time to book in this autistic patient for surgery, the parents say to Neil, the head doctor, we are happy for our son to be booked in for surgery, but we don't want Sean operating on our patient. What's their reasoning? Well, our son can't stop stimming, can't keep still even when needs be. What if Sean has the same problem? This sort of aspect of it, the best way to describe it is this incorrect reasoning, but understandable reasoning. Our son is autistic, Therefore, every autistic is like our son. You understand what I mean? Sometimes you can have that feeling that your preconceptions are based on people you know. You see, when we talk about people in the world and when they have this sort of aspect, this negative stereotype of those that are autistic or those that have ADHD, I wonder how many of them are because they have a relative or a friend with that is neurodivergent and has done something difficult, problematic in their life and has problems. Do you know what I mean? And these parents show that. And they express their feelings like this to Neil. And Neil, this is, like I say, it's a few episodes and it's a really incredible way that he communicates to them. Now, I'm not going to quote it because I can't remember exactly what he says, but I actually saw it yesterday, so I know a bit of an aspect of what he says, which is basically, I've put Sean under a lot of pressure over the past few months, and I can tell you with an absolute fact, there is no one I trust more with a knife. There is no one I trust more to do the surgery. In fact, this is the episode that not only does he show his trust by words, but he gives the knife to Sean to do it. Doesn't, until this episode, Sean is the assistant, but on this occasion, Sean is the one holding the knife. It's an incredibly moving episode and really is this sort of brilliant way to show to everyone, including myself, that we still have a lot to learn about being neurodivergent. Our experiences are not the only experiences. There are people that experience different things. There are things that Sean does that I don't. There are things that Sean struggles with that I do well with. There are things that I struggle with that Sean seems to be fine with. That's how it is. It's a special way to show that, to allow all of us to question what we know and what we don't know about anything that's neurodivergent. It's a really special episode. Now, I couldn't finish this off without talking about, for me, my favourite character of the whole series. Now, some people might think it's Aaron because he shows this caring attitude. Well, a few episodes in, Aaron really shows that he just knows Sean as a kid, the kid that he looks after, and not as the adult he grows up to become. I'm going to be talking about instead someone who doesn't have any reason whatsoever to be kind or friendly to Sean. This is Leah Diallo. I can't remember how it's said. Leah is Sean's neighbour when he first moves in. She sees him as this weird guy. She's the type of person that dates the bad boys, so initially doesn't have any sort of thinking of him. Just sees him as the weird but kind guy in the neighbourhood. But even in the first season, she's not neurodivergent herself. She's neurotypical. She shows how she ends up being a real close friend. Now, there ends up being a relationship between her and Sean, and I'm not going to spoil anything by going how the relationship goes. I'm going to allow you guys to enjoy it, but at the very least, she shows very clearly that she is the neurotypical person that raises neurodivergent people up. She basically ends up being this really cool, outside of work friend. Because this is the thing, most neurodivergent individuals, they've got almost everything equipped for life, apart from a trusted friend. Someone who they can talk to about anything. Someone who they can talk to about all their feelings. You see, in this season, in this series, yes, Sean is considered the hero, but I think Leah gets a huge recognition for how much she's a hero as well. And she has nothing to do with the hospital. She has no connection with the hospital other than potentially becoming a patient in the future. I don't know, right? There's no, but she helps Sean when there's some critical moments in his life in the first season. Absolutely incredible woman, really incredible woman, and I can't help but smile whenever she's on screen. I can't help but smile whenever she talks. She's just this warmth that anyone would want as a friend. So if you end up watching this series and you are neurotypical, take a close eye on how Leah reacts. 9 times out of 10, that's how any neurodivergent person would want you to react. And 9 times out of 10, it's how a kind, warm human being reacts anyway. It's really special. Really, really special. Now, are there any drawbacks? Potentially. Let me just... Is it slide 2? No, slide 3. What are there any drawbacks of The Good Doctor? It's difficult to say. I will say that the challenging thing about it is that, yes, they have to show the Good Doctor in this sort of almost Rain Man reputation. This sort of has to be incredible or he's not worth it. You know what I mean? There's a lot of neurodivergent individuals that are holding down normal jobs and people don't know, they're not doing anything incredibly special, but they are doing things important for the work that they're doing, very crucial for the work that they're doing, right? I am a team manager. In reality, the decisions I make aren't that huge. They're big, but they're not massive. But I'm still doing a work for my company because of the skills that being autistic has allowed me. But I can understand why Hollywood needs to sort of do a hyperbole basically on neurodivergent skills and talents and all that sort of thing, because they need them to look special. They do. Because it allows people to go, this is a series that's worth watching. That's the only drawback, and it's not really a drawback, is it? I think the other drawback is that it's really hard to do a series that is a medical drama but only focuses on one individual. Now I'm just going to draw on UK medical dramas when you have Hobby City and Casualty. It's all about what happens on all around the hospital, not just to one individual or one small group. And it's really hard to get this aspect of a full medical drama, but are we meant to see that? I think it's quite brilliant that the person that did this series or copied this series is the person that did the House series, because actually, if there's anything to compare it to, it is to House, where there is one individual that thinks very differently to everybody else, challenges the norm very forcefully, but this one very meekly. It's a very clever way of doing it. So the only sort of drawback is it's different to what's expected, so perhaps didn't get the popularity that would be said of it. But the special thing about it is that this isn't where every decision that Sean makes goes well, because that would be delusional. Not every decision made by an autistic person or someone with ADHD goes absolutely perfect, and not every decision made by a neurotypical person goes perfect every single time. We're human beings. We aren't superhuman, we're not robots, we run off a different operating system, to quote Fern Brady. We run off different thought processes. So there's some decisions where being autistic and having that the decision as an autistic individual works better than neurotypical. There's some where it works the other way around. right? That's the whole point of it. Different thinking and allowing that sort of different thinking. And it's a very real drama in the sense that, even the people that want to help Sean struggle to help Sean. Because, again, friends struggle with that. There's a very clever family dynamic that's in The Good Doctor. For me, as a series that highlights the realities of being neurodivergent as well as the positives, this is the inspiration. Friends, colleagues, if any of you wanted to make a series at all about someone who's neurodivergent, this is your template. This is the way to do it. This is the way to show that the people that are the closest, that have spent the most amount of time, could be the ones that struggle the most. All that sort of thing. Showing that Aaron's ideas aren't always the best, even though he's spent the most amount of time mentoring Sean. That sometimes it needs a fresh perspective. Sometimes it needs a fresh angle. It's a brilliant way of doing it. So like I said at the start, in terms of medicine, in terms of the way it is medically, probably not the greatest. Not perfect. But as a TV series that highlights how special being autistic can be, this is the one. I don't know whose idea it was to, make the Korean drama originally, but to everyone connected with The Good Doctor, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for showing me a series that was enjoyable, was entertaining, but most of all, felt real. To all viewers, encourage any sort of comments on this. Please feel free to comment, and please like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this.